So let's start out with the generic ballot. We have to ask sort of about the horse race because we were just less than 24 hours away. And if you look at Real Clear Politics, for example, which is a consensus of various polls, it looks like the Democrats still have an advantage overall. Do you want a Democratic House or a Republican House? Although it's narrowed some. How do you feel the race is going overall nationally?
Well, I think, look, Democrats have fielded the best candidates we've ever had running for Congress. I've traveled the country to help many of them. These are candidates who are focused on the issues that matter to the American people. They're talking about driving down health care costs, reducing the cost of prescription drugs, helping to raise family incomes by investing in rebuilding the country, and taking on the pervasive corruption in Washington and getting money out of our politics and getting government to work for the people again. So I think they're the candidates who are addressing the issues. They're contrasting it with what the Republicans have done on these issues. The Republicans are trying to take away health care, are driving up health care costs, are in court right now trying to take away coverage for pre-existing conditions. In terms of family incomes, they just gave a huge tax cut to the richest people in this country, and now they're asking people on Social Security and Medicare to pay for it by enduring cuts to those programs. So I think there's a real contrast between what Democrats are talking about and what Republicans have done. And I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we're not going to take our foot off the gas. People are out knocking doors, making phone calls. We're not going to let up until the last polling place closes. So
as you say, you don't want to count your chickens before they're hatched. Perfectly understandable. At the same time, let's talk for a moment about the possibility, in fact, the Democrats may control the House, which a lot of people think is the more likely alternative. Tell us about the leadership in that circumstance. You said you'd like to be part of the leadership. What do you want to do with it?
Well, I think what we want to do, everyone in the Democratic caucus wants really the same thing. We want to move forward and make good on the commitments we made about the issues we've discussed during the campaign. We need to take action to drive down in a serious way the cost of prescription drugs in this country. We have legislation to do that. That will allow the government to negotiate discounted prices with the big pharmaceutical companies, and that will save tens of billions of dollars to people who are on Medicare, and it will save the taxpayers as well. We need to drive down the cost of health insurance and create more competition and drive down out-of-pocket expenses and premiums. We've got a plan to do that. We have an infrastructure plan to invest $1 trillion to rebuild the country, our roads, our bridges, our ports, our transit systems, our schools. It will create 16 million good-paying jobs, and we need to move forward on that plan to really rebuild America. And finally, we need to make good on our commitment to take on the serious corruption in Washington. The American people have seen an administration with so much self-dealing, so much corruption, many indictments. We need to take on this issue of money in politics, pass the Disclose Act so we know where that money is coming from, pass a constitutional amendment to reverse Citizens United to get money out of our political system and get the government working for the people of this country again. So I think we have to move forward and make good on the promises we made during the course of this campaign on the issues that matter to the American people.
All important issues. I think no matter how anybody comes down, you'd agree those are important issues to address. At the same time, they've been around for a while, and the Democrats have taken positions and had legislation in the past. Is it time to have something of a new renewal, as it were, of the Democratic leadership? I mean, Nancy Pelosi has been there for a long time. Steny Hoyer has been there for a long time. In the natural course of things, at some point, you need some new blood.
Well, look, I think we did elect some new blood when they elected Hakeem Jeffries, Cheri Bustos, and myself to be co-chairs of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, where I'll elect a new caucus chair, a new caucus vice chair. So there'll be lots of new faces in our leadership. But look, I think we're all focused on making sure we go into the majority, make sure we take the House back so we can move forward on this agenda that is really the agenda of the American people. If we're privileged enough to take the House back and have the responsibility of leading in the Congress again, we'll have a caucus meeting and we'll have elections and we'll elect our leadership. And I have no doubt that we'll have a very diverse leadership that reflects the diversity of our country and the diversity of our party that's committed to getting things done for the American people. We
have something like 50 or more candidates on the Democratic side who've said that they will not certainly commit to voting for Nancy Pelosi. Some say they won't even vote for her. Does it make a difference whether you win a majority by 1 vote or 30 votes in terms of Nancy Pelosi's future as the leader?
Look, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that will make a difference. I think whoever wins, if we go into the majority, each member will be required to make a decision about who they're going to vote for in leadership elections. I think what's most important is there is broad consensus in our caucus that everyone has to do everything we can to go into the majority. We understand what's at stake for the American people: health care, creating good-paying jobs, raising family incomes, and taking on the pervasive corruption in this administration and in the Republican Congress. And we are united on that. I think we'll have lots of time to kind of sort through elections. But I'll tell you, none of my constituents care one hoot about who wins this race or that race in the leadership. What they care about is Democrats taking back the House, so the issues they care about, healthcare costs, creating good-paying jobs, raising family incomes, and taking on money in politics are addressed in a serious way.
And presumably they care about that because they want to get something done. They want to get actual legislation passed rather than just people talking about things. How are you going to be able to work with the Senate? Because just as I said, everybody says we think it's likely, not certain, likely the Democrats will take the House. Most people at this point are saying that the Democrats will not take the Senate. Is there any common ground there, assuming they do stay with the Republican majority in the Senate, for you to get some of these things moved?
Absolutely. First of all, I hope you're wrong on the Senate. I hope that there's a huge blue wave in the Senate, too. But look, if we take the House back and the Republicans retain control of the Senate, there is certainly an opportunity for us to work together and get things done. Fortunately, the rules in the Senate require bipartisanship for things to move because of the 60-vote rule. So I think we can get things done. And all those issues, the three priorities we've identified, were actually priorities of the president when he ran. He hasn't delivered on any of them, but he talked about driving down health care costs. He talked about a big infrastructure bill to rebuild the country. He talked about draining the swamp. He's done none of that, but the good news is he's identified those as priorities of his. Those are his priorities. If we can convince the Senate to do the same, there's certainly consensus in the House. I think we can move forward on all of those.
And finally, Congressman, on the infrastructure front specifically, we already have run up quite a debt now with the tax cuts. I'm not saying you were for them, that you wanted that, but they're there and they're being implemented. Can we really have a big infrastructure bill without running up the debt further? And are your constituents worried about how much money we're making, frankly, our kids and our grandkids repay?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's the argument we made when we spoke out very forcefully against the Republican tax scam. It didn't get a single Democratic vote because 83% of that tax cut went to the top 1%, to the richest people in this country. It also made more generous the tax breaks that companies get for shipping jobs overseas, got rid of the individual mandates, so it's driving up healthcare costs, and it wasn't paid for. So you're right, it was terrible. But we can pay for an infrastructure bill. We can take away some piece of that top 1%, the richest people in this country. That would fully finance the entire infrastructure plan. So there's lots of ways to pay for it. We need to take on the debt in a serious way, but giving away $2 trillion in tax cuts to folks who don't need it was not a good idea, and it added to the debt. But we're going to be responsible about it. Democrats have always been responsible. We can rebuild this country, create good-paying jobs, and be responsible about the debt when we don't give away trillions of dollars in tax cuts to the richest people and the biggest corporations who don't need it.